I call this the Holiday Train Challenge because it's just like Jay said, it is a challenge to get it the way you want it. You know what you want to do sometimes, and it's just a challenge. And I will say, I think this is one of those events that actually push our cameras to the limit. And so let's get into this a little bit. Anyway, it is a bit of a struggle to get the picture the way you want it because of the situation. It's dark, and when we had it come through the Quad Cities, it was the darkest that it's going to get for the night. And we have a moving train. Now, the train, as it comes through town, moves rather slow. I think it came through the Quad Cities a little faster than I noticed as it was pulling in to Muscatine. It was very slow, and pulling into Clinton, it was really super slow. But when I shot it coming on its way through town that evening, it was maybe 25 miles an hour. I think as it came in before the performance, it was much slower than that. But anyway, I know this is at least a year away from the next opportunity you'll have to shoot the Holiday Train, and maybe two if it doesn't come next year. But it's fresh in my mind tonight, so I want to share with you my successes and pitfalls, and I did have some of both. Okay, so first off, we had the setup, and if you're going to do this and you didn't do it this year, and you're going to do it the next time, I highly suggest that you go out and pre-scout for location. I did it one sunny afternoon, and I knew it was going to come through Davenport. That's where I was concentrating on, but it could be somewhere along the river all the way up to Savannah or Bellevue or down to Muscatine. So anywhere through there you could concentrate on. I was concentrating on Davenport and where I wanted to shoot. And I was looking for a location that possibly had a curve in it, because that way you can see the bend and you get a really nice composition. But there are places where there's just straightaways. So I wanted to check out those different situations. So I started at the Yacht Club approximately, so that's about at Lindsay Park. And I know that shot, I can't remember who you said put it, but they shot it, Jerry Yeast, that's who it was. He was shooting from Lindsay Park. I shot there last time. You'll see some pictures here in a minute. And then I went all the way down to my last place that I scouted out was Centennial Park here in Davenport. So we knew that the train was due into the city around 5:45, and I think it actually arrived at where I was shooting about 6 o'clock. But I got there about 4:30 because sunset was at 4:33 that particular day, and I got there early enough. Yeah, it's really early. I suppose you could arrive at 5:30 if you want to play it by the seat of your pants, but I wanted to make sure I got there early enough so that I could pre-focus. So this is kind of what I went through. I got my tripod out and set up. I got my camera mounted. I put the remote so I could just use the remote shutter release, and I was ready then. I set up the composition, that I wanted. So looking through the camera, where did I want the train to be in focus? And then I made sure that that was going to have enough headroom so I didn't chop off the top of the train. So I shot a little wider. I wanted to make sure I could crop in if I needed to, but I didn't want to lose any part of the train. So I've got my composition set up. It's still fairly light outside. I'm going to pre-focus. So I know where I want the engine to be. I pick a spot on the rail and I focused on it. And then I'm going to go and I'm going to set, and I do this in manual, by the way. So I flip off autofocus and I focus with my manual focusing on the lens. And then I'm going to go and I'm going to set up my f-stop, my shutter speed, and ISO, and those are all going to be a manual. I'm not shooting in aperture mode, and I'm not shooting in shutter speed priority or any of those, so manual. Click it. So my you got it. So my guidelines, and that's what these are, guidelines. You can see other people use different things. Some were successful, some were not. And the reason we didn't give you this information, like Jay mentioned before, was because we weren't confident in what you needed. And I certainly wasn't going to be responsible for telling you some numbers that didn't work. So now I'm a little more confident since I just did it and I know it worked. So we're shooting in manual. The biggest concern is shutter speed, and like Jay mentioned, that's the first thing I set. When I shot 2 years ago, I used 1/60th of a second, and I got a little bit of movement. It wasn't bad, but it was if you zoomed in real close, I was getting movement. So that told me I needed to go up to 1/200th, up to 1/250th. That was my range. So I shot a little bit of each one of those the night that I was shooting, and the 200th worked. So I didn't have to go to 250, but I didn't know that in advance. So I shot some of each, but I was good with 200. So 1/200th of a second will work. It stopped the motion very nicely. F-stops, I would say somewhere between 2.8 and F4. Some people can't go down to 2.8. If you can't, F4 is your lowest or your biggest aperture opening, then go with it. I was shooting at 3.2 for most of mine. And ISO, 2 years ago, I shot at 6,400. This year, I actually used my own suggestion and said, bump the ISO up and go ahead and keep it high and get a better exposure, because the lower ISO when it's too dark and you have to bring up too much of the shadows just makes the noise worse. So I bit the bullet, I went high, and I'll show you some of what I got. And so I would encourage you to go ahead and try it out. Knowing your camera is part of the thing too. So if the camera doesn't handle noise, you'll have to figure that out. But mine, it's noisy. You'll see a picture in the future here. So let's look at a series that I took 2 years ago. And the reason I'm showing you this is I want you to notice 3 things. One is that I started clicking far before the train was in the location that I was going to be using. But I went ahead and did it because I think we get anxious and nervous. For one, I didn't need to start that early. 2 is I want you to notice that once that train engine is past, I don't know, for me, those pictures are a little more lackluster and I probably won't use them. So I kind of made a decision that I didn't shoot too many of the cars once the engine was passed. I put the camera away at that point. And just notice where the engine is when you think it might be a usable picture. So we'll just flip through these and it's going to go on its own. You can see I'm clicking, clicking. And now right at this point, it's starting to get into a good position, I feel. And there it went dark. That was probably the best one. And now the engine's out of the frame, and I don't really think there's much use for this picture, personally. But this is the picture that I chose to use, because the one that I would have preferred was the one just prior to that, but those lights change, and it just happened that the one that I would have preferred to have had the engine dark, and that wasn't good. So I went with this one when I used it. It's pretty dark. Like Jay said, it's like lights floating in darkness. And I had a lot of cars in the foreground there. And so what I did is I had taken a picture earlier in the evening during the blue hour, and I did a composite. So I clipped out the dark train cars, raised the shadows, and I inserted it into a lighter background. And I had a composited picture that I was pretty happy with last year. This is where Jerry Yeast, I think, was shooting from this year. And it was a good spot, but you do have the road in between you and the train. Now this year, this is where we shot. And this was a picture I took during the blue hour to test my layout, first of all, my composition. And then I took it in case I wanted to use it like I did last year. However, I didn't do that. But I took this so shortly after 4:30, it's probably 4:45 maybe. And this is what it looked like more when it was time for the train to come through. So closer to 6 o'clock, I had taken a photo just prior to the train coming into view, just so that I had it. And so here's a series of the train as it was approaching that night, and I was shooting. And I focused probably about right through here. And so, hold on, let me find my button. So you can see it coming in, I'm clicking. And okay, now we're starting to get in. It's not in too bad a position right here, and it's green. And so it gets a little closer. Red, I like this better. And my next one, oh, it's back to green. I'm not as big a fan of the green as I was the other colors. Still green. Oh, this is the one. This is where it was in the position that I wanted. This is where I focused, and it got to there, and I got lucky because it was a good color, in my opinion. And then there's the next one, and that's not usable. And that was the last one I shot, so I packed it up, and we were going to move on and go to Muscatine. So no messing around. We threw the stuff in the car, and we were ready to head out. But before I get into the Muscatine story, I will show you. This is the one that I decided to work on. Needed to have the noise reduction done to it and give it a little bit of contrast and stuff. And here is the resulting picture. And I was pretty happy with that. It looks like it's snowing, but it was raining. But you can't really tell. The way it catches the light, though, was an addition, I think. I thought it was a positive thing. So then what we did was we found out we had planned to go to Muscatine, and we didn't think the train was stopping in anywhere else in the Quad Cities, so we took off to head towards Muscatine. And when we got to the ball stadium, it had stopped, which I was thrilled with because I was hoping it would. I knew it had a couple of years ago. What that meant is I had an opportunity to shoot again. So we immediately thought of, okay, what's beyond this that I had pre-scouted, and it was Centennial Park. And so we stopped in at Centennial Park. The train was parked at the Ball Diamond, getting ready to leave. And I knew where we were going to stand. And so this is the image that resulted from stopping at Centennial Park. And just standing there for a few minutes, got this one. I got quite a few that were usable, but again, I had a whole series, and when it got to the last 2 or 3, they were the best because they were in the position I wanted. And as the train went past, I decided to turn, and I caught the rear view of the last train car, and I thought it was a nice shot. I don't normally like all those in cars, but this one I thought was neat with the back. So I got that. So now we're heading to Muscatine, and it has a performance there, and so I knew it'd be coming in. We didn't speed. We just went straight there, and no problem. I knew where I was going, so if you want to go to Muscatine next time, I would just encourage you to take that little 45-minute drive down there and find out where you want to be, because I knew we didn't want to be where the big crowd was, because I knew where I needed to go. And so we went directly to where we needed to be. We had plenty of time to get set up and wait for the train to come. We weren't rushed at all. And I got this photo. And I will say this one I was happy with, but when I looked at it, I thought, oh my gosh, I had no idea I was getting this reflection. And I was shooting at 50 millimeter. I could have easily opened that up wider and been shooting at like 35 and probably got a lot more reflection in that water. So I was kind of a little aggravated. It was one of my pitfalls. I thought I could have improved it because I could have shot wider. And I don't know, I think I would have been able to get more train cars and the water without a problem. I don't think there was trees that would have blocked it, so it was just my fault on that one. I did want to show you this. So this last image that I showed you right here, I was shooting at 25,600 ISO. And you can see it does show the noise here on screen. I wasn't sure how it would do it. I did get it mostly cleaned up. It could use a little bit more work, but it's not bad. Now, the next one shows you what the train looks like at ISO 100, and it's awesome. It's so clean. And this was taken when the train was stopped in Muscatine. And so most of the people were right around where the performance was. I walked to the front of the train. There weren't very many people up there, a few that we had to deal with, but not too awfully many. I had it set at ISO 100 for 25 seconds, and this is my shot. Clean. I got beautiful stars on the lights. I didn't do anything special to that. I think I was at F13. The thing that shows it's a time lapse, the 25 seconds, are my flags that have motion. Personally, that doesn't bother me. I actually kind of like it. But I thought it was great, and it was sitting at ISO 100, so I didn't have to worry about noise. The thing is with this, yeah, can you tell it wasn't moving? Only because the flags are flopping in the wind, and you know that to get it stopped in the dark, you have to be shooting fast so it would stop those flags. But anybody that didn't know the process of taking these pictures would have no idea if that train was moving or if this one was moving. It could be sitting there. I mean, it's stopped as far as you can tell. There's no movement in anything. So now that I've told you about, what speeds and stuff you need, you'll know, you can analyze and figure it out. But this is much easier to get a great result, by the way. So just encouraging you to go and shoot the stop train. This one? F-13. So I got quite a bit of depth of field with an F-13. I could have gone a little bit smaller opening on my aperture and gotten a little bit more length, but I don't really think it needs it. I think it's fine. And then it would have had to been a longer exposure. And this is as the train pulled away in Muscatine, so I'm back to my high ISOs, and I got this. But the reason I'm showing you this one, because it looks like a lot of the others, is I want to show you my next series of images. And this is why I encourage you to shoot more than just the ultimate shot, the one where the engine is right where you want it. You need to lead into this because things can happen that you didn't even realize were happening, nor did you do anything wrong. But it was raining, number one. And you can see as the train is approaching me, I'm getting this flare. I think there was a water droplet on my lens. And I was trying to be real careful with keeping it wiped off. But once you're in the shooting, there's not much you can do if it lands on there right after you cleaned it and you're in the middle of shooting. So this would not have been my pick for the image that I wanted to work on, just because it's back a little farther than I wanted it. But there, it's getting better, but look at my flare now. And it just gets worse. So had I not shot for several pictures before the one that I actually wanted, I wouldn't have had a usable image. So I could go back. This image is that one with that flare removed and then cropped in. Okay, so this is my major pitfall. So desperate measures for desperate times. Okay, this is my biggest mistake. I don't know where I went awry, but I just had a mental meltdown, I guess. So we met Stan out in this awesome location, and we were going to get this great reflection in this small little stream of water. And I saw it coming. Now, first off, we set up after dark, and it's much harder to focus when it's dark and in the country. And so mistake one, we should have turned on the vehicle lights so we could really get a sharp focus. And maybe these guys did, I did not. I missed my focus point just a little bit. It's a little softer than I would have liked it. Mistake one. Mistake two, this is where I went totally crazy. And before I was just going click, 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 click as the train approached. This time, for some odd reason, I started shooting when it was way out of where I wanted it. And then I got this wild hair to say, I'm just going to lay on the shutter and it would go click, 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 click. Well, the buffer filled up. And so right there is where the buffer filled up. Right where the next one and the next one and the next one are the three that I wanted. But the buffer's full right here. And I'm waiting. And I don't know if I swore or not, but I wouldn't have been surprised. But I do remember saying, my buffer's full. And this is the next shot I got. I totally missed the engine coming across the water. And so I was so aggravated at myself. And I thought, how can I save this? So I went back to this picture. And if you notice, there's some trees in front of this car and trees in front of that car. And I thought, well, I'm going to take those out painstakingly in Photoshop. And this is what I got. And I had to build that reflection. So I stole the reflection from this one and put it in there. So there's a lot of Photoshop work, and I still don't like it. But you can see the cars, and now I'm not quite so mad at myself, but I'm pretty close. Okay, so then it's like I've got some creative things going. So as it came into Davenport, as Jay showed you, the light of day was not playing well with the Christmas lights. You just can't see the Christmas light shining as it comes into town. Oops, I'm sorry, I'm going to go backwards for a second. We were in Muscatine, first off, the night, and I thought this little train car was really cute. So I don't normally shoot the cars individually, but I thought this was really nice. So I thought, I'm going to shoot this car. And when we walked up on this car, there were no people in front of it. But of course, in the 30 seconds, a minute that it took us to get my camera gear ready to shoot, these people walked up for a picture. And I have no problem with somebody being in my picture because they have every right to be there, but I thought they would move. And so I'm ready, but I'll go ahead and take it just to have it just in case. And they stayed there, and they stayed there, and they stayed there. And it was a long exposure, and I thought, see, if they move, then I can get it, no problem, because you can see some shadows of some feet. Those were people that actually ghosted through my image because it was open long enough that they just kept walking. And so you can see a little bit of shadowing going on, but other than that, they disappeared. So I was thinking, well, if these guys would move, I'll just take a second picture. I can do all kinds of fun stuff in Photoshop, and I'll get them out of there. Well, they didn't, and a lot of people joined them, and it was just like the place to hang out. So of all the pictures I took, and I even recomposed so that light pole wasn't in my toy soldiers area, so I had a better composition, but too many people, so I didn't really use it. So I thought, well, I'll clean up these people, and I got rid of them. Took those people out, and those, because I like to mess in Photoshop, if you know me, and took out the wires up above. And then it was kind of a sterile little picture. Yeah, it was cleaned up, it looked good, but it was kind of boring. So I thought, well, what can I do to it? I'm going to play with this. It was raining, not snowing, but nobody but this group of people and me knew that now. And so I added snow. And so I thought, well, that was fun. Again, in Photoshop, I like to play. Maybe I got a little carried away. I may go back in and reduce some of the big snow that's up front. But when I went back to the other one, it just kind of looked boring. So I kind of liked it, so I left it. I don't know what I'll do with it, but that's what I did creative-wise. But now, as it came into Davenport, you can't see the light. It's not that exciting. It was snowing to beat the band. It was great. It was snowing pretty hard, and of course it was blowing right into our lens. And so I had my lens hood on, and it was doing a nice job of collecting the snow inside the lens hood. But I thought, oh, this is not, I wanted some picture to come out of this daytime shoot, but I got nothing here. So I thought, well, I'm going to play with it a little bit. So I did some editing, and this is what I got. So I brightened it up a little. I cropped in to get rid of the sky. And if you're familiar with Lightroom, what I did is I put a vignette, a radial filter, and along the outside of the radial filter, I added dehaze, but instead of getting rid of the haze, I added haze. So I kind of liked it. It gave me that kind of foggy look, and I admit that I went farther than it really was, but it was really snowing hard, and it really was a little hazy. I liked it. I thought, but it needs something, and I'm not a person that adds borders, but I decided to. So I put a border on there, and I actually liked it. So I was pretty happy with this. I thought it was an image that could be, used as a card for sure to share with somebody. So I thought it was fun. And my last one here is after the train then went past me, I just turned, and this is the shot I got. And I wanted to include this because I thought this is a nothing shot. If I looked at that, I did look at it, and I thought, this is junk. I'm just going to, I can just delete it. But then I got to thinking, well, I kind of liked this area right here. I thought that had merit. I wonder what it would look like if I cropped it. So I cropped it down and then did a little adjustment in Lightroom, and I actually added glow, which I don't normally do, but I did for this because I thought it was kind of fun. So I think that this one works for me. Again, I would be happy to use this as a Christmas card, to print it as a holiday picture that I hung, on my walls during the holidays. I thought it was fun. It's not my normal, but I thought I would try my hand at being creative. Because if you know me, my stuff, I try to make it look like it really does, and this is pushing it just a little bit. But this is what you can do if you go from this to that. So it didn't end up in the trash bin after all. So that's all I have for you. And if you have any questions about shooting the holiday train or anything else, by all means, ask me whenever you see me, and I'll be happy to help you.